Hello and welcome to my talk. I'm Natalie Pithers, founder of Genealogy Stories and the Curious Descendants Club. And I'm hoping today to help you stay inspired with 8 ideas for helping you to write your family history. 8 ideas to kind of never run out of inspiration again, actually. So, idea number 1 is all about thinking about what we do today. Now, note down everything you do in a day. Keep a paper and pen, or perhaps a mobile phone note-taking app on hand, and scribble as much detail down as possible. What did you have for breakfast? What was your routine in the morning in terms of shower and brushing your teeth, that kind of thing? Did you catch the bus to work? Perhaps shove the kids on the bus to go to school? Did you go out and walk the dog? Or perhaps later on in the evening you chilled out with some TV? Maybe you even got to do some genealogy yourself in the evening. Every little action, from tying your shoelaces to selecting milk from the fridge, can act as a spark of inspiration for writing a story. Once you've collected a day or more of data, pick a time period or a specific ancestor or a specific family branch and start to compare and contrast each activity. If you brush your teeth, think about how do people look after their teeth in 1900 or 1800 or 1700. You can even pick 2 ancestors here and compare them through the generations and even yourself. You'll find this kind of thinking opens up a whole world of social, historical and cultural norms to explore. Try and think really broadly here. If you put on your shoes, how did you put them on? When were shoelaces invented? And how were they manufactured? And when did your ancestors start using them? Every little thing that we do can start to act as an inspiration for exploring one of our ancestors' stories. Now, the second idea that I have here is very much taking a leaf from Ian Mortimer's Time Traveller's Guide series of books, which I personally really enjoy, and starting to apply these to your own ancestors. If you were to visit one of your ancestors' homes, you would feel like a bit of an alien or a bit of a fish out of water. How would they maybe have guided you through their lives? Or think about this the other way round. If you were to meet one of your ancestors, how would you explain your daily life to them, or the way that you live your life? Many cultural norms and attitudes and rights have changed over the centuries, and the rights that we have now, or the way that we think now, perhaps, for example, not attending church on a Sunday, maybe if you're not particularly religious, might seem quite alien to somebody from the far past. How would you explain it to them? How would you explain how things have changed and why they've changed? By thinking about it the other way round, that might unlock you being able to write about it from your ancestors' time period. It's just a way of flipping things on its head. And of course, you could also write about your own life, which I think is a part of family history that we often neglect or don't think about at all, and it's still really valid. Next option is to soak up some visuals. And when I say visuals, I actually mean kind of all sensory information here. You could visit an art gallery, perhaps, think about art history and look at what the paintings are telling you about the time period. You could do this in real life, or you could do it virtually. Many art galleries share images online nowadays. You can also look at old postcards. You could visit YouTube and type in the time period and see some of the, if it was after the camera has been invented or after film's been invented, look at some of the old footage that's on YouTube about people going about cities, for example, or walking along the beaches. From these, yes, you've got the visuals, but you can also start to try and imagine what they would have smelt, what the atmosphere would have been like, what they would have heard. Adding those kind of sensory details to your writing really does bring it to life and helps immerse people in whatever you're telling them. I tried this technique as well by just asking Canva, which is what I'm recording this presentation in, to give me visuals on 1920s. And I came up with these pictures. Now, they're quite American based and I don't have American ancestors, but they still got me thinking. They got me thinking about transport, about Hollywood, about inventions such as the gramophone, about attitudes towards drinking, about that association we have of the 1920s being like fun and dancing and jazz and all those kind of things, and how accurate really was that perhaps to some of my more working class ancestors in England or Wales. It got me thinking about changes in architecture, changes in attitudes towards women, and also about the arts of the time, the imagery of the time, the styles and what was popular, Art Deco and arts and crafts and things like that. Did a really similar exercise with 1700s, and again, it came up with mostly American kind of images. But these did get me thinking about some of the worldwide troubles that were going on. It got me thinking about enslaved people, shipping, tricorn hats and the different fashions that my ancestors would have had, the spinning wheel, some medicine bottles over here. All of these things start my mind going and start giving me ideas of things that I could write about. Sometimes a particular image will make me think of a particular ancestor as well. I actually have some basket making ancestors, and weirdly, when I saw this spinning wheel, it made me think of them, even though the two are not necessarily obviously connected in any way. It just got my mind going. My next idea is to tell a friend. Now, this is particularly useful if you really struggle with the structure of stories. So if you have ideas, but you're just not quite sure how to put them in a structure, tell a friend the story. Ideally, record yourself whilst you're telling that friend. Don't talk about it straight away. Have the recording going for an hour or so, and then bring it up later so it's more natural. It's not stilted. You forget that you're recording yourself. It will really help you work out how you actually pull that story together, because most of us naturally verbally can do this, and it's only when we start to put it to paper that we seem to struggle and get stuck. Now, of course, if you don't have a friend in real life that's easy accessible, or you don't want to do that kind of level of recording, you could also ask AI, so something like ChatGPT. You can tell it information about your ancestor and ask it to help you to formulate that into a traditional story structure. You can also just ask AI for ideas as well. It's really good at coming up with inspirational ideas. So you could ask it questions like, I have an ancestor that was illegitimate. They were born on such and such date. I haven't been able to find out who the father is, but I would like to still be able to tell their story. Can you give me some ideas of how I might go about this? And it will come up with a host of things for you to explore. So asking AI is not necessarily about asking AI to actually write the story. It's about asking AI to help you with the ideas and the structure and the format. You can also share some of your work with AI and ask it for ideas for improving it. My next idea about staying inspired is to use one-word prompts. I use these a lot within my Curious Descendants Club, asking my participants to do things like write about the colour yellow or carnations or some other kind of random noun. You can also do this yourself by asking Google to search for, or your favourite search engine, to search for one-word generators. Ideally, nouns seem to work best for this. Next, go and read the news. You could read today's news and think about how it might be presented differently from news in the past. Is it fact-checked? Is it showing bias? How would that compare to perhaps news in the past? But you can also immerse yourself in old newspapers via sites like Find My Past, the British Newspaper Archive, in the UK, and Trove in Australia, just to think of a couple off the top of my head. Reading the news really helps immerse yourself into the actual daily lives of your ancestors. And it's really good for those ancestors that don't have a natural story. So those ancestors whose lives were perhaps a little bit less eventful, perhaps didn't move around so much, perhaps nothing massively bad happened to them, but nothing massively good either. And it just makes it quite hard to kind of think of a traditional narrative story for them. Newspapers are perfect for these ancestors because whilst you may not know of some kind of major life-changing event within their life, they will have still witnessed major life-changing events that happened either on a local, national or global scale, and reading the news can really help you dig down into these. I have a whole article just on how to write stories using newspapers available on my website, genealogystories.co.uk. You might want to pause the recording here to look at that link, or simply visit genealogystories.co.uk and navigate your way to the Learning Centre, where I have this article plus a host of others on how to get creative and write your family history. Now, last but by absolutely no means least, think about how you actually researched your family history. So stories don't always have to be those kind of narrative stories with a really clear beginning, middle, end, and turning point, and overcoming disaster and those kind of elements. Actually sharing how you researched your family history, how you analysed a piece of data, how you determined whether something was correct, what methodologies you employed, how you actually even found out about the sources that you used. All of these are really valuable, as is the ability to do kind of statistical analysis or crunching of big numbers, or looking at trends within a place or within a family. That's not a skill that everybody has. So if you do have that skill, please do write about it and share it. Pass those techniques along. You'll find that a lot of genealogists will find those particularly interesting to read as well, as they like to improve upon their own skills. So please don't just think about who our ancestors were, also think about your genealogy and how you did it. And then lastly, but by no means least, please remember that constraints actually breed creativity. So many people find themselves completely stumped when they're looking at a blank white page and they're just told, write your family history. It's too big, it's too broad, you don't know how to start. You could start literally anywhere. But if you start enforcing constraints upon yourself, I must write about this decade, I must write about this place, I must use no more than such and such words, I have this deadline, I want it to have this theme. Start adding those constraints and you'll find that your creativity naturally starts flowing. I think this can sound really counterintuitive, but think about all those businesses that were forced to furlough employees or lock down during COVID that ended up pivoting or doing really creative things to work around those COVID-related constraints. I think that's a really good example of how things being difficult or less broad can actually make us more creative as human beings. I hope you found that useful. For more hints and tips, please do visit www.genealogystories.co.uk.